Chapter 1. The Silence of the Table. Gabriel Martinez's blood streamed across the operating table like red ink on white paper, forming pools that the nurses desperately tried to stem. The 8-year-old boy had arrived at St. Luke's Medical Center after a brutal accident. An out-of-control delivery truck had struck him while he played on the sidewalk in front of his house in East Los Angeles. His small, fragile bones couldn't withstand the impact of 3 tons of steel and metal. Dr. Richard Anderson, a surgeon for 20 years, had never seen such devastating injuries in a child. Gabriel's heartbeat was irregular, his breathing almost non-existent. His ribs had punctured his right lung, his liver was lacerated, and there was massive internal bleeding. It was like trying to reassemble a porcelain doll that had fallen from a 10-story building. Outside, in the cold, poorly lit corridor of the county hospital, Maria Martinez clutched her husband Jose's calloused hand while tears rolled down her face, marked by a hard life. They were simple people. He a construction worker, she a housekeeper, who had worked their entire lives to give their only son a better future. Gabriel was everything they had in the world. Chapter 2. The Last. Breath inside the operating room, the machines began beeping desperately. Gabriel's heart stopped. Dr. Anderson began chest compressions, his hands pressing the small chest with controlled force, while the nurse applied electric shocks. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. The silence that followed was deafening. On the wall clock, it was exactly 2:47 p.m. on a gray Tuesday in May. Dr. Anderson looked at his team with tired eyes and shook his head. 20 minutes of attempts. It was over. With trembling hands, the doctor covered Gabriel's face with a white hospital sheet. The child who had been playing soccer with friends on the dirt road just hours ago now lay motionless, his dream of becoming a professional player buried with him on that cold table. The head nurse, Mrs. Carmen, a robust woman with graying hair who had witnessed hundreds of deaths in her 40 years of service, wiped away a stubborn tear that rolled down her cheek. There was something about Gabriel's innocence that had touched her deeply. Chapter 3. Between Two Worlds. What happened next would challenge everything Dr. Anderson believed about life and death, about science and faith, about the mysteries that separate this world from the next. Gabriel didn't remember the pain. He didn't remember the deafening sound of the truck's brakes, nor his mother's screams when she found him lying on the asphalt. What he remembered was a golden light, soft as his grandmother's embrace, that enveloped him completely. Suddenly, he was standing in a place that seemed familiar, though he had never been there before. It was a green valley, with gentle mountains in the background and a crystal-clear river flowing peacefully between stones polished by time. The air smelled of wild flowers and fresh bread from the oven. And then he appeared. Gabriel knew who it was without needing to ask. Jesus had the gentle face he saw in the illustrations of his mother's Bible, but his eyes contained all the wisdom and love of the universe. He wore simple white clothing and smiled at the boy with a tenderness that warmed his heart. "Don't be afraid, Gabriel," said Jesus, and his voice was like music. "You're safe now." Chapter 4. The Children's Garden. Jesus extended his hand to Gabriel, and together they began walking through that wonderful place. The boy noticed he felt no fatigue, hunger, or thirst. His bare feet stepped on the softest grass he had ever felt, and each step seemed to float above the ground. In the distance, Gabriel saw other children playing. They ran and laughed with a pure joy he had never witnessed on earth. Some appeared to be his age, others were smaller, even babies. All radiated a soft light and seemed perfectly happy. "Who are they?" asked Gabriel, watching a curly-haired girl, who waved at him with a radiant smile. "They are children who came before you," Jesus replied. "Some were on earth for a short time, others never even got to be born. But all are precious to me, just as you are, a small child, who couldn't have been more than 5 years old, ran up to them. She had the face of an angel and held a golden flower that shone like a miniature star. "This is for you," said the child, handing the flower to Gabriel. "Everyone who arrives here gets a special flower." Chapter 5. The revelation. As they walked, Jesus showed Gabriel wonders the boy had never imagined could exist. Trees that sang heavenly melodies, butterflies that left trails of colorful light, crystal-clear fountains that bubbled with music. It was a place where the wildest childhood imagination became reality. "Is this where I'm going to stay?" asked Gabriel, amazed. Jesus stopped and knelt before the boy, placing his gentle hands on the small shoulders. "Gabriel, you have a choice to make. You can stay here, where there is no pain, sadness, or fear. Or you can go back." "Go back?" Gabriel didn't understand. "But wasn't I hurt? I don't remember coming here." "Your body is on an operating table. Son, the doctors did everything they could, but you passed away. However, I have a special mission for you on Earth, if you choose to accept it." Gabriel's eyes filled with tears. Tears of longing, not pain. What kind of mission? Jesus smiled with that infinite tenderness. "You're going to be my witness. You're going to tell people about this place, about my love, about the hope that exists beyond death. Many people need to hear your story, Gabriel, especially those who have lost their faith." Chapter 6. The Impossible Choice. Gabriel looked around that paradise, then at Jesus' loving face. His 8-year-old mind tried to process a decision that would challenge even adults. Stay in that perfect place or return to pain, to the difficulties of earthly life. "My mom and dad," Gabriel began, and his voice caught. "Will they miss me? They are suffering greatly at this moment," said Jesus gently. "Your mother is praying in the hospital corridor, asking for a miracle. Your father, who was never very religious, is kneeling for the first time in years, begging for your life." One of the children playing nearby approached. It was a boy a little older than Gabriel, with eyes too wise for his apparent age. "I chose to go back once," said the boy. "It was hard to leave this place, but I was able to help many people find their way here. Now I'm home forever." Gabriel felt a warmth in his chest, a certainty that came from somewhere deeper than his mind. "I want to go back," he finally said. "I want to tell everyone about what I saw here." Chapter 7. The Farewell. Jesus embraced Gabriel with an affection the boy felt to the depths of his soul. "You are brave, my son, but know that it will be difficult. Some people won't believe you. Others will try to explain your experience in other ways. You will have moments of doubt." "How will I remember all of this?" asked Gabriel, suddenly worried. "I will place the words in your heart," Jesus promised. "And when the right time comes, they will come out naturally. Besides, you will carry something special with you." Jesus touched Gabriel's forehead, and a sensation of warmth and peace flowed through his entire body. "This mark won't be visible to human eyes, but all who have faith will recognize it in the brightness of your eyes, in the wisdom of your words." The other children approached to say goodbye. Each gave Gabriel a small, invisible gift, a whisper of encouragement, a memory of love, a promise that they would meet again. "When it's my time to really come home, will you all be here?" asked Gabriel. "We will be," they promised in chorus, their voices forming a celestial harmony that echoed through the valley. Chapter 8. The Impossible Return. Dr. Anderson was filling out the death certificate when he heard a sound that made him drop his pen on the floor. A weak sigh, almost inaudible, came from under the white sheet. Impossible. The boy had been dead for 15 minutes. With trembling hands, he pulled back. the sheet and almost fell backward. Gabriel's eyes were open, clear and alert, as if he had just awakened from a peaceful sleep. There was no confusion, disorientation, or pain in his face. Just an inexplicable peace. "Doctor," said Gabriel with a clear voice, "I need to speak with my parents." The operating room exploded into activity. Nurses ran to check the machines, other doctors were called. But all the tests showed the same impossible thing: Gabriel was not only alive, but completely healed. The fractured bones had mended. The lacerated liver was intact. The lungs functioned perfectly. Dr. Anderson, a man of science and skeptic by nature, looked at his own tests and couldn't find a logical explanation. In 20 years of medicine, he had never witnessed anything even remotely similar. "How do you feel?" he asked, still in shock. Gabriel smiled with a maturity that shouldn't exist in an 8-year-old child. "I feel like I've returned from a very beautiful trip, doctor, but now I have work to do here." Chapter 9. The Reunion. When the operating room doors opened and Dr. Anderson appeared with Gabriel walking beside him, Maria Martinez collapsed to the floor. Not from despair, but from relief so intense that her legs couldn't support her. Jose, a strong man accustomed to heavy work, cried like a child. My son," repeated Maria, hugging Gabriel tightly, as if she feared he might disappear again. "I prayed so much, asked Our Lady so much." Gabriel returned the embrace, but there was something different about him that his parents noticed immediately. His eyes seemed deeper, as if they had seen things no one else could imagine. And when he smiled, it was as if an inner light illuminated him. "Mom, Dad," said Gabriel gently, "I need to tell you where I've been." Dr. Anderson, who watched the scene with scientific fascination and personal amazement, decided to stay to listen. Something inside him said he was about to witness something that would change his worldview forever. Gabriel began to tell his experience with details that an 8-year-old child shouldn't have the imagination to create. He described Jesus with impressive theological precision, spoke about the heavenly valley with words that seemed to come from another place, mentioned children he met there with specific and touching stories. Chapter 10. The Transformation. In the days that followed, news of Gabriel's miracle spread through the hospital like wildfire. Nurses who had witnessed his death and resurrection couldn't talk about anything else. Patients asked to meet him. Other doctors came to examine his tests, searching for a scientific explanation they never found. Gabriel remained hospitalized for a week for observation, but he was healthier than any child who had ever passed through those wards. During this time, he spoke with hundreds of people. Terminal patients found comfort in his words. Grieving families felt hope reborn in their hearts. There was a nurse named Rosa who had lost her faith after the death of her own son in an accident years before. She initially avoided Gabriel, considering his story a fantasy or psychological trauma. But when he approached her one day and said, "Your Johnny is fine. He asked me to tell you that he loves you and is waiting in the beautiful place," Rosa broke down in tears. Johnny was the pet name only she used for her son. Gabriel could never have known that. Dr. Anderson, skeptical by training, began to question everything he believed. He spent sleepless nights studying Gabriel's tests, searching for a medical explanation that continued to elude his understanding. Chapter 11. The Divine Calling. When Gabriel finally returned home, he was no longer the same child who had gone out to play in the street that fateful morning. Physically, he was perfect, but spiritually he carried a mission that weighed on his small shoulders. Their simple 2-bedroom house in the barrio became a pilgrimage site. Neighbors came asking for prayers. Mothers brought sick children for Gabriel. To touch, people traveled from other cities after hearing his story. Gabriel received everyone with patience and love, but Maria noticed that sometimes her son got tired. Not physically, but as if carrying so many hopes and others' pain was too great a burden for a child. "Mom," said Gabriel one night, lying in his simple bed, "sometimes it's hard to be here when I remember how beautiful it was there." Maria sat beside her son and stroked his hair. "Do you regret coming back?" Gabriel thought for a moment. "No. Jesus told me that many people need to hear about his love, and I see it in people's eyes when they find hope again. It's worth it." That night, Gabriel had a dream. Jesus appeared again, not in the heavenly valley, but in his humble home. "My son," said Jesus, "the time has come to spread your message beyond these walls." Chapter 12. The Mission. Expands Father Miguel, pastor of the small St. Joseph's Church in the neighborhood, was one of the first religious leaders to hear Gabriel. A simple man with solid faith, he immediately recognized the authenticity of the boy's experience. "This child has been touched by God," he told the diocesan bishop during a phone call that would change the course of Gabriel's life. "You need to come meet him personally." Bishop Charles Ferreira, a bishop for 30 years, had seen many cases of supposed miracles and apparitions. Most turned out to be fantasy, trauma, or even charlatanism. But something in Father Miguel's urgency intrigued him. When he finally met Gabriel, Bishop Charles was impressed not only by the consistency of the story, but by the spiritual wisdom that emanated from the child. Gabriel answered complex theological questions with simplicity and depth that left the bishop perplexed. "Are you afraid to speak to crowds?" asked Bishop Charles. "Jesus told me that he would put the right words in my mouth," replied Gabriel, "and that when I doubted, he would remind me of the love I felt there." That's how Gabriel began speaking. In churches, first locally, then in other cities. His message was always the same: God exists, love is stronger than death, and there is hope beyond this life. Chapter 13. Trials and Doubts. Not everyone received Gabriel with faith and acceptance. Skeptics argued that his experience was a hallucination caused by lack of oxygen to the brain. Some religious leaders questioned whether a child could receive divine revelation. Investigative journalists looked for holes in his story. Gabriel faced each questioning with patience. But sometimes at night, alone in his room, doubts attacked him. What if it was all imagination? What if he was deceiving people desperate for hope? What if God hadn't really sent him back? It was during one of these crisis nights that Gabriel had another special visit. Jesus appeared again, this time sitting on the edge of his bed like a loving father. "Doubts are part of faith, my son," said Jesus gently. "Even my disciples doubted sometimes. What matters is that you continue trusting in the love you experienced and sharing that hope with others." "But what if I'm wrong?" asked Gabriel with tears in his eyes. Jesus touched the boy's face with infinite tenderness. "You saw my face, walked with me, knew my love. That is more real than any doubt that might assault your mind. And the fruits of your mission, the transformed lives, the restored hope, the renewed faith, are proof of the truth you carry." Chapter 14. The growth of the message. As Gabriel grew, his message expanded as well. At 12 years old, he had already spoken to thousands of people. His story was documented by researchers, investigated by doctors, studied by theologians. But for Gabriel, the most important thing was the individual testimonies of transformation. There was Sandra, a mother who lost a baby and was on the verge of suicide until she heard Gabriel speak about the children in heaven. There was Robert, a successful but empty businessman who found purpose after meeting the boy. There were hundreds of others, each with a story of renewed hope. Dr. Anderson, who had become a friend of the Martinez family, continued studying Gabriel's case. He published medical papers about the resurrection, but always concluded that science had no explanation for what had happened. "Some mysteries," he wrote in his latest article. transcend our capacity for understanding. Perhaps that's what makes them truly miraculous. Gabriel also grew in wisdom. He learned to balance his spiritual mission with the normal life of a child. He played with friends, went to school, helped his parents at home. But he always carried with him that special light in his eyes and that peace that came from having walked with God himself. Chapter 15. The Eternal Legacy Today. At 16 years old, Gabriel continues sharing his message around the world. He has written books, participates in international conferences, has a ministry that reaches millions of people through different media. But for him, the most important thing continues to be personal contact with individuals who need hope. His simple house still receives daily visitors. Maria and Jose, now recognized as parents of an extraordinary young man, remain humble and grateful for the miracle that changed their lives. Dr. Anderson, now 70 years old, dedicated the final years of his career to studying unexplainable phenomena in medicine. He became a man of deep faith and considers Gabriel the greatest miracle he has ever witnessed. The church officially recognized Gabriel's experience as authentic after years of rigorous investigation. His story is studied in seminaries and theological universities around the world. But perhaps Gabriel's greatest legacy is something impossible to measure statistically: the number of people who found hope in moments of despair, who discovered that death is not the end, who learned they are loved by a God who doesn't abandon them even in the darkest hours. Gabriel knows that one day he will return to that wonderful valley, will meet Jesus again, and the children who received him with love. But until then, he continues fulfilling his mission, being a bridge between heaven and earth, a living testimony that God's love is stronger than death, and that there is hope beyond any tragedy. And every night, before sleeping, Gabriel whispers a prayer of gratitude. Thank you, Jesus, for letting me come back. Thank you for using me to bring your love to so many people. And thank you for reminding me every day that life is a precious gift and that every moment here on earth is an opportunity to make a difference. Because sometimes the most extraordinary miracles happen through the simplest people, and sometimes it's a child who teaches us the deepest truths about life, death, and God's eternal love.